everyone, it's Sarah and welcome to my crochet channel. This is our houndstooth hat. We designed it to match the houndstooth scarf. I made mine with the same yarns as I did my houndstooth scarf, and the hat measures approximately 20 to 22 inches wide. It's very stretchy, so keep that in mind if you're worried about the hat fitting your head. And remember, you don't want your beanies to fit too loose, especially if it's cold outside. Now you can find this crochet pattern on my blog, and I'll put that blog link down in the notes underneath this video. To make your houndstooth hat, you're going to need some yarn, of course, and I'm going to be using the same yarn that I used for my houndstooth scarf. Medium number 4 acrylic yarn in red and white. You're going to need about 2 ounces of each color, and that estimate might be just a smidge high, but I would rather have too much yarn than not enough. We're going to be stitching today with our eye hook, and the eye hook that I'm using is a 5.50 millimeter crochet hook. You'll need a needle to weave in those ends, and then you'll also need your scissors. Now you can add a pom-pom, furry pom-pom, yarn pom-pom if you want to. I'm not, but you certainly can. You can also add any embellishments like a button or a bow or any of those types of things as well to personalize it. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave mine plain and let the stitch of the houndstooth be the star. We're going to begin at the top of the hat and stitch a circle, and then we'll be stitching in a tube form, and then we'll do the band of the hat. And then when we finish that, we'll come back up to the top of the hat and close up that hole. We're going to be starting with our white yarn, and then we'll be going back and forth every other row, white and red, white and red. So I've got my red close by. We'll begin with our slip knot, and we're going to chain 3 chains. We're going to do 60 foundation single crochets, and the way we do that is we'll go in that second chain from the hook and pull up a loop. We'll yarn over and we'll just go through that first loop. Then we'll yarn over and go through both loops. And the reason we're doing a foundation single crochet is to give us a nice stretchy row for our first row at the top of our hat. All right, let's keep going. We're going to go in that chain that we made, pull up a loop, yarn over, just pull through the first loop, yarn over, and go through both loops. And so what we're doing is we're stitching our chain in our single crochet without stitching a starting chain. All right, so we'll do that again. We'll go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, and just go through our first loop, yarn over, and go through both loops. This is called, like I said, a foundation single crochet. And something that you can do to count your stitches so you don't have to keep recounting is maybe stitch about 10 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 8, 9, 10. I usually do 20 before I start marking it, and then you can grab your stitch marker, put it in that 10th stitch, and keep going. Then as you keep going, you won't have to recount the stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so you could add another stitch marker. I like to do mine every 20, so I'm going to move this one to this last stitch. And now I know I've done 20 foundation single crochets. And then I'll do 20 more and mark it again, and do 20 more and mark it again, until of course I have 60. It's just a way to keep track of how many stitches that you've done. So for row 1, we need to do 60 foundation single crochets. If you are uncomfortable or just don't want to do the foundation single crochets, you can chain 60, join in a circle, and then stitch 1 single crochet in each single crochet around. You'll still have 60 single crochets, but you won't have as stretchy as a top row. Alright, so I'm going to continue on stitching my foundation single crochets. I've completed my 60 foundation single crochets. You can see I marked my first row with 2 stitch markers marking 20, 40, and then 60 stitches. And I go ahead and take those out. We're going to make sure we don't twist this in any way. We're going to join to our first single crochet with a slip stitch, and then we'll go ahead and chain 1. Now you'll notice there might be a gap right here. Don't worry about that. We'll come back with our needle and weave that in a little bit later. So for row 2, we're going to be switching to color 2, which I'm using red. We're going to be leaving our yarn attached and carry it up on the inside of the hat. And so we'll go ahead and bring in our color 2. Snug everything down. And go ahead and make a little chain 1 just to hold everything in place. Snug everything down tightly. And what we're going to be doing is stitching around, and we're going to be doing that alternating stitch that we learned when we did the scarf. And it's really simple. We'll go right in our first stitch and stitch a single crochet. Then we'll go to our next stitch and stitch a double crochet. And we'll alternate this, moving all the way around. Single, double, single, double crochet, single crochet, double crochet, moving all the way around our hat. Single, double, single, double, single, and double. We'll stitch this all the way around and we'll join back to our first single crochet. I've completed this row, single, double, all the way around. You're going to end on a double crochet. You're going to join to the first single crochet with a slip stitch. We're going to drop that red yarn or whatever color you're using for your second color and bring back in the white. Snug everything down, and we're going to chain 3. And the reason is our first stitch here was a single crochet, and so our chain 3 counts as a double crochet. So then we'll go to our next stitch, which is a double crochet, and stitch a single crochet. And so we'll stitch double crochet, single crochet. And so what we're doing is stitching our double crochets in the single crochets and stitching a single crochet in the double crochet, alternating every other stitch. We're still stitching a single double. We're just placing all of our singles in the double crochets and all of our doubles in the single crochets. And that's what gives us that houndstooth look stitch. And we'll continue this working all the way around. Double in the single, single in the double, double in the single, and single in the double. Again, working all the way around our hat, and then we'll join back to that first stitch. Single crochet, double crochet, single crochet, double crochet. So I've completed row 3, stitching single double, making sure that my singles are in a double and my doubles are in a single stitch. Your last stitch should be a single, and we're going to join to the top of our chain 3 that counted as our first double crochet. Oops, I got a little string there. There we go. We're going to drop our white yarn and pick back up our red and bring that in. Now let me show you in here. You can see where I'm carrying my yarn. And that's the way we're going to do the hat. When we did the scarf, we carried the yarn across because we were moving back and forth. Because we're moving in a circle this time, we just need to carry it up that one place. So we've brought in our color 2. We're going to chain 1. And then in the top of our chain 3 from the previous row, we're going to stitch a single crochet. And this is very important to keep your stitch count correct. There we go. And since our next stitch, or our first stitch, is a single, we'll stitch a double crochet. Then our next stitch is a double crochet, so we'll stitch a single crochet. And then we'll repeat double, single, all the way around for row 4. Making sure that we stitch our single crochets in the double crochet from the previous row and our double crochets in the single crochet of the previous row, working all the way around. Single, double, single, double. I completed row 4. I joined to my single crochet, and of course now we're going to change back to our white yarn. Make sure everything is snug down, and again you can see I'm carrying my yarn. And so what we're going to do for the next 14 rows is we're going to repeat row 3 and row 4, alternating colors and alternating rows. And after you've done this far, I think you've got a good idea how the hat works. So we'll continue to repeat row 3 and row 4 for 14 more rows, alternating every other row. So this is how your hat should look at R18. We did the first 4 rows and then we did an additional 14 rows, which gave us 18 rows. This is where we started with our white, and you need to end on red. And that's because we're going to do the hat band in white yarn. And at this point, this portion of the hat should measure approximately 9 inches. And if you need to adjust it a little bit, you can. You can take some rows out or add some rows if you want your hat to be more of a slouchy or longer. But keep in mind, we have 4 rows of the hat band to add as well. All right, so at this point you are at R18. And now we're going to show you how to add the hat band. So I've completed those rows. I'm going to go ahead and cut my red yarn because we're finished with it for now. And I'm going to join back in my white because I'm going to be doing the band of my hat in white. I do want to show you the inside of my hat where I carried my yarn. And with this particular stitch, you can hardly even see it. All right. Now, what we're going to do for the hat band is we're just going to stitch 1 double crochet in each of the stitches around. So we'll begin with the chain 3 that counts as our first double crochet, and then we'll stitch 1 double crochet in each of the stitches around. And this is just going to give us the foundation to work off of for our hat band. So 1 double crochet in each of the stitches, working all the way around our hat, and then we'll join back to that chain 3. I've completed this row of just 1 double crochet in each double crochet around. I'm going to join to the top of that chain 3 with a slip stitch and chain 3. And this chain 3 counts as our first double crochet. Now what we're going to do next is alternate front post double crochets with regular double crochets. And this is going to give us a nice stretchy band to help our hat stay on our head. So our chain 3 counts as 1 double crochet. Our next stitch, we're going to stitch a front post double crochet. So yarn over, and instead of stitching up here in the top, we're going to stitch in what's called the post. So we'll take our crochet hook and go around the post of the stitch and stitch our double crochet. We're still stitching double crochets, we're just putting them in different places. And so we're going to be alternating every other stitch, stitching double crochet in the next and front post double crochet in the next. Front post in the next. Alternating every other stitch, double crochet, front post double crochet. Chain 3 counted as our first double crochet, then we did front post. Regular double crochet, front post, regular front post, regular front post. And we're going to repeat this, working all the way around our hat band. And then again, we'll join back to our chain 3 where we started. And don't let this stitch trip you up because you're still stitching a double crochet. You're just placing it around the post of the stitch instead of in the top. And this pulls it in a little, also gives us that band look as well as pulling it in a little and making it a nice edge for our hat. I completed that row of stitching double crochet, front post, double crochet, front post all the way around. Your last stitch should be a front post. We joined to the top of the chain 3 and chained 3. And what we're going to do for this row is repeat what we did for the last row, and it makes it really nice because we know we can go right in our front post stitches, and so it's going to move along rather quickly. Our chain 3 counts is our first double crochet, and then we'll front post in the front post and double crochet in the double crochet. Double crochet front post in the front post and double crochet in the double crochet. And that's going to make that band, the look of that band, really stand out and be beautiful. And so we're going to repeat this, working all the way around, stitching our front post in our front post double crochet and our regular double crochet in our regular double crochet. All the way around our hat. Whoops, I've got a knot. So anyway, we're going to continue this, stitching front post and double crochets, alternating all the way around and join back to our chain 3 while I work on getting this knot out of my yarn. So I completed that row. Knot crisis was averted. It was a simple knot that I could pull right out, in case you're wondering. So we stitched double crochet in the double crochet, front post double crochet in the front post double crochets, alternating all the way around. All right, so then I joined to the top of my chain 3 and I only chained 1. And that's because this last row, we're just going to do a row of slip stitches, and that's going to help our band not curl up on us. All right, so we'll go in the next stitch, pull up a loop, and pull that loop through the loop on our hook. And we'll do this all the way around. That's going to give us a nice pretty braid edge on the bottom of our hat band, and then also help our hat band not to curl up on us. A lot of times when you do the front post alternating with the regular double crochet, you get a little bit of a curl on the end, and that's just going to help that lay pretty, have a nice cute edge, and keep it from curling up on us. We don't want to have a beautiful hat and then the edge curl up on us and not look pretty. Alright, so we'll just do this all the way around. One slip stitch in each of the stitches working around our hat band. And once we complete this row, we'll just weave in our end, and then I'll show you how to close up the top of your hat. I completed that row of slip stitches all the way around, and you'll notice it does keep your hat from curling up. So we're going to join to the first slip stitch with a slip stitch. Cut that white yarn. We're going to go in the next stitch and pull that loop to the back or inside of our hat and tie that off. All right, we'll need to take our needle and weave that in, but that's the way the hat should look at this point. Here's our band and our hat. And now I want to show you how to close up the top of your hat. So the first thing you're going to want to do before we close our hat up is that tail of yarn where we did our initial single crochet foundation row, you had a little bit of a gap. And so what I do is I thread on that tail of yarn and I make a couple stitches to pull that in so we don't have a gap there. And then we'll go ahead and weave that in. And we also have a red one to weave in where we began. But that's one really nice thing about carrying your yarn up on the inside of your hat. You have two you have to weave in here, one here on your where you ended your red, and then one here where you ended your white, instead of having to weave in every row. We'll come back and do that after a bit. The next thing I want to show you is how to close up the top of your hat and have it look nice. So you're going to cut a piece of yarn that I'm going to say is about 18 inches. It's probably more than you need, but I like to have more just in case. We're going to thread that onto our needle. We're going to go to our back, and you can find that by finding where your tail of yarn are, where you began. And so what we're going to do is we're going to stitch in and out of those initial stitches. We're going to pull that, but we're also going to leave a tail of yarn. And we'll work all the way around the inside of our hat, going in and out of those stitches. And continue to gather it around. Once you've stitched all the way around, you're going to take both of those strings. We're going to go and make a little knot like that, and then we're going to pull those closed. And we're going to pull it really tight until it closes up completely. We're going to take both of these and we're going to flip them to the inside. So we'll turn our hat wrong side out. We'll put our hook through and grab those threads and pull them through. And it's okay, you can take your needle off, you don't need it at this point. But we want this to be on the inside of your hat. So we're going to pull that through, and we're going to pull on that to make that nice and tight as we can, but be careful not to break your yarn. And you'll notice I have one longer and one shorter. And that's for a reason. We're going to go ahead and give this a couple of knots. 1, 2, and 3. Make sure they're good and tight. Then we're going to make sure that needle is back on the longer portion of our yarn. And what we're going to do is make a few stitches. And this is just going to help it stay secure. So I'm going to go in here and go across. And then I'm going to go across this way. And we're just bringing those in a little bit more just to make sure there isn't any hole or gap in the top of our hat. All right, I'm going to take the needle back off and we're going to do some more knots. And we're going to pull on it just a little bit to make it nice and snug, because we don't want the top of our hat to come undone. I'm going to tie those 3 knots. 1, 2, and 3. And then there's a knot I like to do. I don't know what it's called, but I pull both of the threads around and make a loop, and then pull them through that loop. There we go. And then I push it as close as I can to the hat. I do this on a lot of different things. All right, I do need to take a few minutes and weave those ends in, but I want to go ahead and turn this out so you can see how the top of the hat looks. It's nice and tight and closed. And of course, a few more ends I need to weave in, but this is the way that the hat looks. And this is the completed houndstooth hat. It turned out lovely. Now, you can add a pom-pom of your choice, buttons, ribbons, bows, however that you want to embellish it. But me, I'm going to keep it plain, so the houndstooth pattern of the hat is the star.